This
Open it up.
conference will
So
now be recorded.
those of you that are new, if you feel comfortable, you can participate in the chat box when I ask a question to the group. So I'll be kind of floating back and forth between the people that are on ground here and the people that are online. And we're recording this, so if people miss a session or aren't able to make the time, they can make it up. So I sent you several emails over the last week, and I had hoped to send it out earlier, but I got to it later. So did you all receive the emails? Yeah. One, okay. I sent two. I sent one on Monday, one on Tuesday, and one today. So I didn't see any comments, so hoping you were able to look at the post, but what I was hoping to do is see what you were doing through the week. So if you feel comfortable commenting, and you can always go back, just make a comment of what you're doing, again, on your preferred mode of social media. And I had a lot to say on gratitude, right? So typically I'll probably only email you once, maybe twice a week, but I had just written so many posts on gratitude, and I felt like there's so many things to cover. So we talked about expressing it, accepting it when we don't accept it, and then how to amplify it and advance it. So you can go back and check those out, and I'd love it if you have something to say about it and you're comfortable posting. But given those posts, what gratitude intervention did you try, and did it work or not?
I tried a combination of letting in positive experiences and awe. So instead of going to the health club and working out.
Well, this is from the 12 intentions, right? So like, yeah, okay, perfect.
And so instead of going to the health club, I went to this beautiful little nature center that's right by my house called Emily Oaks Nature Center. And I've been there all my life, and I've never found this little, in clay. It has fences around it, there's paths and trees and waters and boats. I just walked through the path and took it in and smelled the smells of the leaves and everything. So I amplified it at the same time. I made it more intense by noticing everything around me.
Oh, that's great. So you were able to do the gratitude and do it as you were kind of savoring nature. And so Dr. Pappas, if you can't hear online, she's saying she found a nature sanctuary near her house and walked through the path. And that just brings up a couple other points in that the more green space you have, the higher your happiness. Forest bathing, nature, that definitely has been shown to help happiness levels and mental health. So she's combining that boost from nature with the gratitude, and then able to really savor it. I mean, it sounds like you had a lot going on that really.
It was great. I'm just walking through the trees were shadowing everything, looking through the path, and it's a beautiful experience.
Right. Thank you for sharing.
I took a little bit of a twist on what you did with your family, and I just did it because I was trying to do the daily gratitude in the morning. Like 3 things that I'm grateful for to kind of start it off. And I had the journal right by my desk.
Right by your bed?
Yeah, I looked forward to like coffee. But then I found myself just kind of repeating the same things just in a different way. So then I was like, why don't I flip it? Why don't I do it at night? And then I reflected on my day, and I found I had a lot more to say. Right? And it made me like remember things that maybe I passed or I didn't appreciate in that moment because it was going. And then I reflected on it, and I was like, that was a nice moment. Like a little one for me was taking the blue line home with one of my coworkers from class. And we got to know each other in a way better way, and it was really nice. And then the next day, she brought me some coffee beans from Kenya.
Oh, that's so cool.
And it's like that moment would have never happened, if I wasn't pushing myself out of my comfort zone and decided to talk, you know what I mean, or whatever the case may be.
So interesting, you both were doing something new and then had something to be grateful for. Yeah. So those of you online, if you can't hear, Cody's saying he tried it in the morning, and it sounds like it was more global, right? Yeah. Like I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for, my wife or my husband or whatever. And at night, when you tried it at night, you were able to get more specific with the actual little things that occurred in your day. And I think that is the key, moving from the global to these very specific things, because it helps you point it out. But like Dr. Pappas, you did something new, and you kind of brought it in with putting yourself out there and made a connection, and then we're grateful for it. So, all right, good. Anybody else want to share?
Yeah,
I tried it, the three good things that have happened, and me and my boyfriend, he works at the Merchant at Smart, so we'll do lunch together every day. So at lunchtime is when we can like let's discuss like three good things that happened from the day before. And that was just to try it out. But then when I work upstairs on the 10th floor in admissions, and we have like quads, is how our desks are set up. So we call our quads a cul-de-sac. Everyone comes and talks to us, and like it's, so I realized we have a new dean. So with any new management, there is going to be change, and it's not always going to be liked. And I can hear people that's not really liking something. So I'm like, I feel like they could use some positive psychology. So I'm like, within my cul-de-sac, it's the four of us. We are all doing it now together. Like, let's do positive things. And one of them already committed. She's like, I actually do feel a lot better and not focusing on the negative things of the work life that we have. And so it was kind of cool.
That's great. Okay, so you're also sharing, Victoria's also sharing it with others, trying it with your lunch date in the mart, and then also sharing with your coworkers. And so you're experiencing that. What I found in my dinner thanks is this, like, you know, it's like exponential. It really magnifies it, and it's like I'm sharing with other people, and that feels good too.
Yeah.
So, and there's many different ways. So that's, again, all these different ways, and they're really good. And so hopefully the idea is we know that we have neuroplasticity, right? We used to believe, you know, when I went through graduate school, your brain was fixed. And now we're saying, no, there is this neuroplasticity, and you can rewire your brain. And what we're doing is fighting our negativity bias. We have this very strong bias to look for what's wrong, and that's what keeps us safe. And that's good, but in our modern world, you know, we don't need to hide from the saber-toothed tiger, right? Or watch the bushes for it to, you know, jump out at us. But we take each little thing as stress like we would in earlier times. And so this rewiring of the brain and this practicing and strengthening our gratitude muscle helps us be more positive, right? And I think for me, the other thing is, you know, being very clear, like you want to be grateful. When there are negative emotions, we don't want to stuff those down. I want to be very clear in positive psychology. It's not about glossing over those or ignoring those, but you want to give space for those and let it breathe, and then be able to be resilient and go back to some positive thinking. Yeah.
I love neuroplasticity.
I know you do. That's why I was looking at you and I was thinking of I should mention it.
I read something the other day that just sounds so perfect. So your mind could be either like Teflon or Velcro. So you can take in the good things, or the negative things could be attracted to you and stick to you. So what do you want to be, Velcro or Teflon?
Oh, that's very interesting. So do you want to be Velcro or Teflon?
So to me, that makes a lot of sense, putting it in picture words like that.
Yeah, it does. And thinking about the effect you have on others too, right? Okay, so did anybody try any of the 12 interventions? You did a little bit of savoring. You got out with nature, kind of mind and body. I know that's big for you. Did anybody else try like the coping or the being kind or anything? Or it's okay if you just focused on gratitude.
I feel like I'm being kind all the time. With my 8-year-old who's going through her puberty, but I don't say like, what are you grateful for in this moment? I'm just like, get your life together. But I always say like, okay, so it's morphin time. Can we refocus here? So when she hears me say it's morphin time, she's a huge Power Rangers fan. It makes her be like, you know what, mommy, I'm okay. That was really nice of me. So that's how we do it in my house.
That's weird. So it sounds like you're using superhero, you're engaging with her, and you're using that to be kind.
Yes, because, you know, adults, we see something different than our children, like
Yeah.
child. So in order to keep, because she's really intense with her emotions, so in order to keep her and myself at eye level, I find that just saying it's morphin time, and she did this little stupid dab and dance and everything.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, this is how the kid did, and so it's been working.
All right, so you're using the super morphin. I don't know this reference. You would have to.
So the Power Rangers.
Power Rangers.
Like the bad guy shows up, and the Power Rangers go, it's more sometimes.
I get it. So you're like being the superhero that's dealing with the bad guy, just kind of kindly pointing out maybe she's
Not being realistic.
not being kind or so. Okay, that's great. Yeah, and I think one thing that's interesting about children is that we've learned to hide our emotions and sometimes not deal with them in a beneficial way. And children have not learned that yet, so they are going to let you know. And we tend to think that's bad, but it's actually really healthy, like that, to get that out, and for you to be that safe sounding board. So very interesting that we want, again, like I'm saying, don't tamp it down, but there's ways, and it sounds like you're anchoring her back to kindness, which is great. That's a great example. Okay, so today we're going to talk about growth mindset. Has anybody heard of this? Dr. Representative. Okay, so what I want to help you with today is just understanding what the mindset is, and that your mindset dictates the type of praise that you give, which has a powerful influence on others' behavior and your own behavior. And it also dictates the questions that you ask of yourself and that you ask of other people, and that also has a really profound effect. Okay, so let me just ask this general question. Do you believe you can become smarter?
Do you want actual responses?
Well, if you don't have to, if you don't want to.
So do you mean IQ,
Yeah.
or do you mean other
Like
behaviors?
It's a big question, is it on knowledge or on?
Well, this is how all the growth mindset research started. And basically what they found was, let me click through. Oh, it's hard. I'm sorry, yeah, that dinging in the background, that's the bridge that's going to go up. It's going to be like that for a while. So what do you believe? Your intelligence is something very basic about you that you can't change. You can learn new things, but you can't really change how intelligent you are. You're a certain kind of person. There isn't much to be done about that. That's a fixed mindset, okay? And the opposite of that is no matter how much intelligence you have, you can always change it quite a bit. You can substantially change how intelligent you are. You can always change. And this is a growth mindset. Now, we're talking about intelligence, but it applies to every area of our life. And this comes from Dr. Carol Dweck. She's got some great TED Talks, this book, Mindset. It just started a whole line of research, both academic and work research. And I have a couple students doing, growth mindset is what we use for layman's terms, but in academia, we call it learning orientation, or performance orientation, or performance avoid orientation, which I'll talk about. But basically, it's a set of beliefs about that determines our behavior, outlook, and attitude, right? And I think as psychologists, you all know this. Your beliefs determine a lot. A belief is a thought you've repeated often, and it's something you convinced yourself is true. And I'll give you an example. When I first learned about growth mindset, we were asked to think about something that we had a fixed mindset on, and I realized mine was technology. And I really had convinced myself I was not good at technology. But one of the things that I figured out was when I went through and assessed what I did in technology, it was absolutely zero. I put out zero effort. I watched zero YouTube videos. Literally, if the information was coming my way, I was, just rejecting it, right? Because I had this belief that I wasn't good at it. My PowerPoint's always screwed up. GoToMeeting never worked. Anyway, I laughed and I realized I have put no effort into this. So I've put in a lot of effort now, and I've increased my skills and changed that outlook. Although I'll catch myself going back to feeling like I'm not good at it. But anyway, what I have here is a fixed mindset is like a rock. It's rigid. You believe there's talent. Either you have it or you don't, right? And we can believe that as teachers too. We can get caught in that trap. And you believe it's nature. You're born with it or you're not. And growth mindset is like Play-Doh. It's malleable. You can be curious. You want to learn something more. And it's nurtured. You can develop more skills. You can improve, get better and stretch yourself.
Dr. Johnson, quick question.
Yes.
So with happiness, we have a set point.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm thinking about intelligence, I'm thinking, isn't there a set point for that too?
Right, and there probably is a set point. Again, there's like a range we can work in, right? I'm not going to get to be a mathematical genius, but my beliefs about math can hurt my ability and my tendency to learn. So, and you bring up a really good point, and that everything that we're going to do in this class is all about how we can improve, and there's a way that we can do it. So we can change our fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And it's very different. Those of us in IO, which is the majority of this room, and I know Dr. Newhouse is on the line, she and I went to school together, and we very much learned intelligence is fixed. There's nothing you can do about it. That was what we were brought up to believe. But we're now learning that there is, you can change your brain, you can do things, just for a small example, when they look at cab drivers' brains before and after, I think it's the hippocampus gets much larger. So like the structures in your brain are changing. Again, I don't think I'm going to become, an astrophysicist, but if I had started earlier and really applied myself and wanted to do it, I potentially could have it. Probably not at this moment. But anyway, I think the heart of positive psychology is we can improve, right? And to get rid of this attitude that we can't, which is exactly what we're talking about today. So what I want you to do, either on the chat, but in the room, you can pair up. You can I want you to think of a big challenge in the last few weeks, something that's really stumped you, bothered you. Describe that problem, and what was your belief about the problem, right? So kind of tearing it apart, what was the event and what were the beliefs, right? And so you may not be aware of your beliefs, but I want you to really think about what were your beliefs about this event. And then kind of, was it fixed or growth mindset, and share with your partner.
Hi, I'm Cody. Pleasure to meet you. All right.
This conference will now be recorded.
And so it doesn't, even though you don't care about the grade, your work ethic is good.
Okay, so we're back recording, and I just want to get a few thoughts from the room. Did you find a correlation with your problem and a fixed mindset? Yeah, and just to share with online, we were sharing like a fixed sense of time, things that are beyond our control, so there was some good conversation going on there, right? So I think the trick is recognizing it and flipping it, and I'm going to give you a little cue on how to do that. And I think also the key is we were talking about some chronic issues, is like accepting reality and having a growth mindset, can be challenging, but that's what we're going to do. Okay. All right, so I have this cartoon that I love, and basically you've got Calvin here berating the girl, I forget her name, because she's studying and she's putting in effort, and then he's saying, aha, I used to think you were smart, right? So this talent notion is like if you put in hard work and you put in effort, then you weren't smart enough, but it's exactly the opposite. Anybody who's talented, I don't know if you've heard from Malcolm Gladwell, but like the 10,000 hour rule, right? If you're to be truly a master of good anything, you need to do 10,000 hours. So we have to get rid of this notion that putting out effort is bad. And so I have this great chart here that really outlines, if you have a fixed mindset, you're worried about people judging you, you tie it to your identity. If you do something good, you're like, whew, I'm in the clear, let's stop. You don't want to appear dumb, and you need to be right away. And this learning process is, okay, I had a setback, I'm going to work harder. And I need to learn something, and effort can take me where I want to go. You feel smart when you learn something new, and you see other people as a resource, not somebody to judge you, right? So this is the different attitude you can have. So if you catch yourself, the great news is you can switch. Okay, so what I want to do here is there's just a few, there's a ton of research on growth mindset. So to give you the scientific credibility behind this, basically, there are some students offered a remedial English class for an English university in China, and they measured them on fixed and growth mindset, right? And as you would expect, the fixed mindset did not reach out and do the class, and the growth mindset did, and then that impacted their whole trajectory and performance through the school. As you can imagine, if you have to speak English for the classes and you don't, if you believe it is what it is, and I won't get better, right? So you can see how that happens. There's also medical students, basically, that fixed and growth mindset. When things got hard, people with fixed mindset lost interest, did worse. They literally controlled for it, and things just started going downhill for people with fixed mindset. Whereas when it was really challenging, medical students went up. In our relationships, people with a fixed mindset around relationships, they want an ideal mate. They want someone who kind of puts them on a pedestal, says you're great, you're perfect, you don't need to change. People with a growth mindset really want their partner to push them and help them be a better person, right? So again, this really gets into ego. Like, I don't want my ego challenged. I don't want it threatened. We had some students, I can't remember what age they are, but basically when they failed, they were it must have been college students, because when they failed a test in an experiment, they could either be shown tests of people who did better or tests of people who did worse. People with fixed mindset wanted to see who did worse. They wanted to feel better about their ego, right? People with a growth mindset wanted to learn and see how they could have done better, right? The other thing that's really interesting is the way we are as teachers can impact growth mindset. And in math classes, you can literally say, here's a mathematician, they were a genius, they were just brilliant, and you literally induce fixed mindset in children, and they will perform worse on math tests. But you could say, there's this mathematician, they were an ordinary person, they worked really, really hard, and they put in all this effort and became a great mathematician, and you can induce fixed mindset in grade school children. It's that easy, right? So the words that we use are really powerful. And here is a brain scan showing, they're literally hooked up to the scanner, they're taking a test, they're getting items right and wrong. And people with the fixed mindset were literally things were shutting down in their brain to learn, right? Whereas the growth mindset stayed equally engaged, right? Whether they were getting it right or wrong, they were trying to learn. But the fixed mindset, even when they were being retested, couldn't do better because they were blocking it out. Okay, so what's important here, there's two things. It's how we praise people and how we ask questions. And when we give person praise, when we talk about who the person is versus what they're doing, we're inducing a fixed mindset. So one of the classic examples that I do all the time, especially with children, I'll say, oh, you're so smart, right? That's person praise, not the best. So I've switched myself to really talking about I noticed you put in a lot of effort. You really persisted there, right? Because what happens is if you're telling them they're smart, and there's a great New York Times article on this, when they come up with failure, then they think, I'm dumb. Then they don't want to try, then they start hiding, and then, things aren't good. So you want to really focus on practice, persistence, and strategy. What the person is doing. And for me, one of the things that I noticed about myself, and I learned when I got certified in positive psychology, is I give a lot of detail in my grading when someone makes a mistake. I give very little detail on practice, persistent strategy when someone does well, right? So I make an effort to say more about what it was they did right, right? Because they have to know how to repeat that behavior. Okay. So I kind of already told you about this, but just want to, I love this visual, you know, person praise is junk food. It's not good. It's not good in the long term. Processed praise, you know, it's vegetables and fruit. You're getting your greens, so it's very healthy for you. So what I wanted you to do is go back to your partner and think about maybe this last week and think about the type of praise you've given and whether it's person or process. I'll give you just a minute for that.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so what were your thoughts? So I'm interested in hearing about like when you doing the person praise and when you're doing the process praise.
It was kind of shocking to really know how hard you really had to think about it. So it's like, wait, did I do praise with detail? And like you did focus on things that we're grateful for, but I never really thought about giving that back as much. So like trying to identify that time to give praise.
So it's hard finding that time. Like I think my I'm always like, good job, right? So that's my my quick praise, which isn't doing. We had someone share on here, like they might ask. Let me get the question exactly right. I ask how something happened. How did that happen? Which I noted engenders a little more critical thinking. Mm-hmm. Anyone give any good person praise?
I do that a lot when I'm reviewing dissertations, because this, you know, dissertation takes several iterations until you get it right. And I always start with some kind of something about, you know, you've moved forward on this. It's nice to see you moving forward. And then to keep you moving forward, let's try this, this, and this.
Oh, that's a great way to say it. So acknowledging.
Sometimes I'm looking at the dissertation and thinking,
yeah, that's true.
and I can't say that or.
Right. So Dr. Pappas is saying, she says, you've made some progress, like, so noting that, and then saying, you know, to move forward, then you want to do A, B, and C.
And then kudos on moving forward.
Yeah, kudos on moving forward.
And then we set up a meeting.
Good, which is, you know, very much process praise. Like you're in this process, you've taken a step forward, you're going, you know, right, versus the standard good job, which is, you know, I used to think that was pretty harmless, and you'll still hear me say it, so it's going to be a habit that's hard to break. But the opposite of that is bad job, right? I mean, I didn't say good job like we say, how's it going, you know? But the opposite of good job is bad job. So I am putting some evaluative thing on it versus talking about the process.
I've also looked at so for us to meet a goal in admissions, it's to obviously recruit a certain amount of students. And sometimes it can be very goal focused. So when people aren't hitting their goal, they really focus on that number, even though they're only 1 or 2 students away from hitting their goal, which is still an impressive thing, because when you think about goals for a company, you always kind of overshoot it,
Mm-hmm.
kind of anticipate that, you know,
the shortage
there. So I've always told, again, one of my closest friends up there who does stress out a lot about that, I've always told her, I'm like, well, you were at goal, so we'll be a week away from the start. And she probably got like 5 students within that last week, which is huge in that term. So I always recognize that for her. I'm like, you got 5 students in 1 week when in 10 weeks you've only gotten 1. So that's a huge accomplishment for you.
Perfect. So you're focusing on the process. You're saying you got 5 students in that last week. Like that's exactly, it's a great example of focusing on what she's doing well. Yeah. Right. And then encouraging her.
And
right.
Even though you may not meet goals, that's a big accomplishment. Like they'll see that. Like so that's something that they'll notice and be thankful for. I mean,
Right. Yeah, no. Good, okay. So, let me, what's this? All right, so those of you looking to do any dissertation work, again, it's classified into three. There's a 4 model. I do not like the 4 model. I've had 2 students use it. It doesn't do well. I got really weird results. Mastery approach, mastery avoid, performance approach, performance avoid. I like this one. I like Van der Waal. That's the particular measure I use. It was in your survey. So we have learning orientation. We're at mastering the material, learning for learning's sake. You know, I heard Cody talking about this with stats. Like, it's not about the grade. It's about, did you learn something? So you could really learn a lot and come away with a B, and it's not going to matter, right? It's about what you learned. Performance approach, and this is not a bad thing, but sometimes it can hinder. This is about, you want to get a good grade, you want to be recognized, right? And this is where we're going from intrinsic motivation to extrinsic motivation. And this intrinsic motivation is going to give you more fuel. It's going to help you, you know, the performance approach can create some anxiety, right? And then there can be these bad habits that come out of this. Now, performance avoid is the worst. This is where you just want to avoid a negative outcome. You're not really trying to learn. You're really not trying to perform. You just do not want to fail this class, right? I see this a lot coming into stats. And so it's really hard to try to change people's mind to just like, it's not that you're just not going to fail. You really want to learn, right? So if you're interested in using this in your dissertation, there's some meta-analyses. It's tied to some really good outcomes, academic and work. Just want to throw that out there for you. Okay, so this is what I get really excited about. What I want to point out here is there's this book. It's called Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Marilee Adams. What I want to point out is we are all recovering judgers. Right? So we just are. And I constantly catch myself judging. And I don't mean judging other people. I mean just being in a judger mindset, right? And this judger mindset is definitely correlated with not getting along with others, poor performance. It's not related to anything good. And so what happens is we can start down the judger path. Don't beat yourself up for this. We're wired to do that, right? And you kind of go in and you're like, something happens, you're like, whose fault is this? Who am I going to be mad at? When you kind of get that bad feeling of going down the judger path, you can switch. You can be like, whoop, I'm on the judger path, let me switch to the learner path, right? If you don't, you keep going down, you get in the judger pit. This is negative emotions, bad feelings about yourself, even when you think it's somebody else's fault. That still doesn't feel good. So it's not helpful for you. So you want to get out of this blame-focused, win-lose type of mindset. And I think, and I was chatting with Manny earlier, he was saying, what happened? And that's the first question on learner path. What happened? What do I want? What are the facts? What assumptions am I making? What can I learn? What are my choices? What's the best thing we can do now, right? I love this one. When we're in a bad situation, everybody's mad about the bad situation. This happens at work frequently. You're handed something that's very undesirable, and you know, so and then you have to say, like, you can sit there and complain about it and be really mad about it. You can say, like, what's the best thing to do now, right? Forget the past, forget that we got in this bad situation. What's the best thing to do now?
I have one question.
Yeah.
So once someone is judging you, how do you deal with that without judging them?
Okay, so if someone's judging you, how would you judge them?
Well, I mean, not how to judge them, but how do you come back at them in a way that without being defensive or falling into the trap of further saying, I'm not like that, so are you, you are like that, I didn't.
Right. So somebody's judging you, how do you stay out of that judger mode and going back? I think like somebody's judging you, acknowledging their viewpoint, right, we know it's gonna get right. I see you see things that way. From my perspective, here are the things I'm working on. This is my process, and I'm headed there, right?
They're wrong.
Well, I think that's that kind of goes outside of the growth mindset
Yeah.
purview. What if they're wrong and they're judging you? I think that kind of goes into resilience and some other self-efficacy things. But I think you can just reaffirm, like, I've been improving, I'm improving, this is what I'm doing, and
A lot of onus to take on.
what?
You're like, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. It sounds like the other person is not, I don't mean to interject, but it sounds like you would be doing more work than the other person to meet you in the evolution process of unpacking the assumptions together.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying is you could do a lot more, but I'm just saying from a growth mindset perspective, just from this here, what I would say would be, I would acknowledge what they're saying. Let's say somebody says, you're not doing your grading fast enough. And I think I turn everything around in a week. You're crazy, right? But what I'm going to say is, I see you feel it's not fast enough for you. Let me walk you through what I do and how I'm doing it, kind of explaining, right? And this is my process. And then, I would encourage, what do you think could be different here, right? And then say that's realistic, that's not realistic. But it might get at some of those assumptions. But you see what I'm saying? I'm saying that this feeling for you is real, right? You feel it's not fast enough. That's legitimate. Like, is that grounded in reality? Here's my reality. Okay, here's what's your reality. And what might happen is they might tell me a reality that I'm like, oh, yeah, well, I could do something to help out with that. But I didn't know that, right? So, I think it just opens up the dialogue. Okay, yeah, you're welcome. So here's our judger questions and our learner questions. You'll have this PowerPoint, so you can refer back to this. You can make a handout if you want to use this in anything you do. So it says we all ask ourselves both kinds of questions. We have the capacity to choose at any moment which questions will frame our thinking, listening, behaving, and relating, right? So just learning this has helped me think about, when I'm asking this question, usually internally in my mind, it's not going to be a good outcome, right? And I need to switch to see what I can learn. Okay. Very quickly, and maybe I'll just have you just think about this since we're out of time. Just think about the thing that you were having a fixed mindset around earlier in our earlier activity, and think about the types of questions you were asking, and just pick one learner question that you can ask in that situation. Okay, and our takeaway is the antidote to fixed mind is curiosity. This is the one character strength I recommend that you can't really change your character strengths, but this is one I'm like, yep, it's a great idea to work on this. If it's not your strength, just try to boost it up a little bit. Give process praise, use learner questions, and then I'm going to ask you, how can you practice this each day for 1 minute this week, right? And so I'll be sending you some posts for you to, or a post for you to read and comment on how this is going. And so hopefully we can share, and there's some online people too, and get a conversation going. And with that, any questions? Let me put it back up to. Let me go down a minute. Okay, great. Thank you, guys. And just a reminder, you can go to the website and find any of this stuff. It'll take me a day or so to post it.